Hello, second grade scientists. This is Mrs. Miller here with lesson 3 of science on properties of solids. You might already know this. I bet you already learned this in first grade and in kindergarten. But just as a reminder, when scientists observe, they examine something very closely using their senses. And our 5 senses are, can you read them with me? They're sight, hearing, touch, smell, and even taste. Let's watch this video to learn more about how scientists observe and the types of things that they might observe.
People are curious by nature. They want to know things about the world around them. People can learn about the world by making observations. Making observations, or observing, means using your senses to notice things. Humans have 5 senses: taste, touch, hearing, smell, and sight. When a person observes something, they are using their 5 senses to notice an object's characteristics. Size, color, shape, texture, and weight are some characteristics that can be observed through the senses. Take this object, for example. You can use your sense of sight to see its shape and color. It has a rectangular shape and a reddish color. You can also see the size of the object. You can use your sense of touch to help you observe the object's texture and weight. This object is light enough to pick up, but it would feel rather heavy in your hands. Texture is how the surface of an object feels. The surface of this object feels rough. Your sense of hearing can also help you make an observation about the object's texture. Tapping the object on a table or hitting it with a hammer makes a sound. This tells you that the object is hard. All of these observations help you recognize that this object is a brick. Now, observe this object. Again, you can use your sense of sight to observe the object's size, shape, and color. It is pink in color. It is small enough to pick up, so it is not very large. But it is also not tiny. The object is shaped like a heart. What would your sense of touch tell you about this object? The texture is very soft and fluffy. It is easy to pick up, and the weight feels light. The object also feels squishy and can be bent. If you tap it on the table or hit it with a hammer, it would not make much sound. This is your sense of hearing telling you that the object is soft. The characteristics you have observed help you recognize that this object is a pillow. Now, observe one last object. What characteristics can you use your sense of sight to notice? You can see that the object's size is small. You can fit it in your hand. You can also see the object's color. It is light brown and has black specks. Using your sense of touch, you can observe that the weight of the object is light. The texture feels a bit bumpy on top, and the sides of the object have ridges. The object is also soft. You can break it easily with your fingers. If it were fresh from the oven, the object would also feel warm. You can use your sense of smell to observe objects as well. This object smells sweet. Your sense of taste will tell you that the object also tastes sweet, like chocolate and sugar. Your observations tell you that this object is a muffin. When you are making observations, try asking yourself questions that relate to your senses. How does the object feel? What color is the object? How does the object taste or smell? What does the object sound like? These are all great questions to ask yourself. Making observations is a useful skill that can help you describe objects by their characteristics.
After watching this video, what did you learn about the way that people can use their 5 senses to observe objects? Think. And then I want you to share what you're thinking with someone near you. Whether it's, if you're at home, whether it's someone in your family or your imaginary lab partner, science lab partner, or if you're in school, it's going to be somebody who's sitting next to you. Okay, I'm going to start the timer. When I say go, turn and talk and share what you learned about the way that people can use their 5 senses to observe objects. Ready, set, go. All right, eyes on me. So what I learned is that we can see things like color and shape, and we can feel things like the texture of an object, how it feels. We can also hear an object. I hadn't really thought of this before, but it's true. If you took an object, like let's say this pencil, and you banged it on your desk, that could help you to know whether it's soft or hard. You can also taste or smell something to observe it. Now, when examining different objects, scientists might observe the properties of those objects. But what are properties? Do you have any guesses? Make a guess in your head right now. And when you have your guess in your head, I want you to touch your head. What do you think that word properties means? 3, 2, 1. Well, I will tell you. Properties are used to describe matter. Properties are the characteristics of an object. So in that video, they talked a lot about observing characteristics. Well, properties are the same as characteristics. It's just a more sciencey word for characteristics. Let's learn some more. I'm going to read you an excerpt from this book, What is a Solid? It's written by Lynn Peppas. Okay, let's read this section. The heading says, In Touch with Matter. You can read along in your head as I read out loud. Solids have many different properties such as shape, size, color, and texture. Texture is how something feels. Some solids are hard, such as bike helmets. Some solids are soft, such as kittens. Even though they feel very different, they are both solid. Solid shapes. A solid has its own shape. Most solids keep their shape even when put into different containers. You can change the shape of some solids if you try. Modeling clay is a solid that you can change the shape of. You can mold it into different shapes or flatten it out, but when you leave it alone, it stays in the same shape. Solids keep their shape unless you do something to change them. And then let's read this caption here below this picture. Let's see, this is a picture of a girl cutting something. It says, "It is difficult to change the shape of a hard solid, but it can be done. Solids such as paper can be ripped or cut, but even if you do change them, they are still solids." All right, now let's keep growing our knowledge. I'm going to now read you a few different sections of this book called Touch It, Materials, Matter, and You, and it's written by Adrian Mason. The heading in this section says A Material World. Stone, metal, paper, plastic. These are different materials. Everything around you is made of some kind of material. A marble is made of glass, and this book is made of paper. Well, this book is on our computer screen, but the book itself that was used to make this to make this presentation, it was made of paper. How many different materials can you see in the picture? So right now, would you please take a look closely at this picture and see how many different materials you can notice. Oh, I'll start. Let's see. The slide, I'm going to count them across my fingers. I know the slide is made of metal. The sandbox is made of wood. Let's see. The marble I just learned is made of glass. Can you keep going? See how many you can name. Ready, set, go. One, two, three, eyes on me. So what else did you notice? What other materials did you notice? Did you notice that the book is made of paper and let's see, the blanket that this woman is knitting is made of yarn or cloth. Also, all of the kids' clothes and the woman's clothes are made of cloth. What else? Oh, this walkway is made of stone. So many different materials. This next section says describing materials. Now, this section doesn't use the word properties, but I wonder if what they talk about here, when they talk about describing materials, if they're talking about properties. At the end of reading this, I'm going to ask you if you think that they're talking about properties when they are talking about describing materials. So start thinking about that. Different materials have different shapes, colors, and sizes. A plum is round, purple, and small. A banana is long, yellow, and bigger than a plum. You can use your senses of sight, touch, smell, and even taste to describe materials. How would you compare a strawberry and a pineapple? Okay, so before we do that, are they talking about properties here when they talk about shapes, colors, and sizes? They sure are. Those are examples of properties. Now, how would you compare a strawberry to a pineapple? Can you go ahead and do that? I'm going to give you 10 seconds. I want you to share what you're thinking. What properties does a strawberry and a pineapple have in common, and how are they different? I'll give you 10 seconds. Ready, set, share what you're thinking. One, two, three, eyes on me. I wonder if we were thinking the same thing. I was thinking, well, they're similar in some ways. They're both sweet. They have that in common, but they're different in some ways too. They're different colors. A pineapple is yellow. A strawberry is pink or red. And a pineapple, if you touch it, the texture is rough and like prickly. Where a pineapple, if you touch, a strawberry, if you touch a strawberry, it's bumpy, but it's not rough like a pineapple is. Okay, this next section is called touchy materials. I'm wondering if this section will talk more about textures. Let's see if I'm right. That's my prediction. Different materials have different textures. Look at that. My prediction was correct. Texture is the way something feels when you touch it. A rabbit's fur feels soft. A wood fence feels hard. Soft, hard, rough, smooth, and prickly all describe textures. What kinds of textures do the objects and creatures in this farm have? How many different textures can you name here? Okay, I'll give you 10 seconds. Go ahead, and I want you to count how many different textures you notice across your fingers. Okay, I'll start. Let's see. Well, the porcupine is prickly. That's one. The sheep is fluffy. That's two. Keep going. See how many you can name. One, two, three, eyes on me. So let's see if you came up with some of the same ones that I came up with. I said the bunny is soft. I said the horse is smooth, and so is the cow. Did you come up with those same textures? All right, now let's think about this question. What are some examples of different properties? We just learned about some in the 2 books that we read. Can you name some? What are some different properties? Go ahead and see how many you can name across your fingers. Ready, set, go. Okay, let's see if you came up with the same examples that I came up with. Here's what I wrote. Color, flexibility. Ooh, that's a fancy word. We didn't even hear about that in our books, but we'll learn more about that. Can you say that word, flexibility? Shape, texture, and size. Okay, now color. You all know your colors, so I don't think that we need to spend much time on that, but we know that different objects can be different colors. They could be purple, red, orange, yellow, green, or blue. Now, flexibility. This might be a new concept for you. I bet though that you've heard the word flexible before. So if something is flexible, that means it's bendable. And if something is rigid, that means it's not bendable. So let's go through some examples of flexible and rigid. Wow, look at this gymnast. She sure is flexible. She's able to really bend her body. And these bendy straws here, they're very flexible too. You could twist them all around. Oh, a slinky. Have you ever played with a slinky? Slinkies are very flexible. They're easy to bend. Now let's try something. I want you to stand up, push in your chair, and we're going to see how flexible we are. Different people have different levels of flexibility. So let's do a quick little activity to see just how flexible we are. All right, now standing right behind your chair, I want you to put your hands up and reach down and touch your thighs. Can you do that? Okay, let's see if we're more flexible than this. Now reach down and touch your knees. Can you do that? Now reach down and touch your shins. Can you do that? Oh, now reach down and touch your feet. Or how about this? First, your ankles. See if you can do that. I can't do that anymore. I'm not as flexible as I used to be. Now, if you can touch your ankles, see if you can bend all the way down to touch your toes or your feet. Can you do that? And how about, can you reach down and touch the floor with your fingertips? Can you do that? Okay, last but not least, see if you can reach down and get your hands flat onto the ground. If you can do that, you're really, really flexible. Mrs. Miller is certainly not that flexible. Can you do that? Awesome. Okay. All right, now you can sit back down. And if you were able to touch the floor, you're very, very flexible. And if you were able to touch the floor, I want you to clean your hands. So if you're at home, you can go ahead and pause this video and go wash them at the sink. And if you're at school, you can either use hand sanitizer that's at your desk, or you can ask your teacher for permission to go and wash your hands. Now, again, this is only for people that were able to touch the floor, because the floor is very dirty. So we want to make sure that we keep our hands clean. You can pause the video here and unpause it when your hands are nice and clean and you're ready. Okay, so now we know what the word flexible means. Flexible means bendable. Now, what about the word rigid? Can you please say that word, rigid? Rigid. So rigid means not bendable. Let's look at some examples of things that are not bendable or rigid. Okay, so this cane. You might have maybe a grandmother or a grandfather who use a cane to help them walk. A cane is very rigid. It's very hard. It's not bendable. Let's think about what would happen if the cane was, instead of being rigid, if it was flexible. Would that help somebody to walk very well? Picture what would happen if you were trying to walk with a cane and it was bendable. Picture what would happen. You would go to lean on it and it would probably sort of bend under you. It wouldn't really help you to walk much, would it? You probably would end up falling. That wouldn't be very safe. So canes are made rigid for a reason, to help people to walk. What about your desk? Your desk or your table is certainly very rigid. Can you picture in your mind what would happen if you went to write? If you put your paper on your desk and you went to write and the legs of the desk weren't rigid, they were flexible. When you leaned on your desk, the desk would probably fall forward or fall to the side or lean one way or the other. It wouldn't be very easy to write on a desk that's flexible, would it be? And how about a mug? Yeah, a mug is also rigid. Now picture what would happen if a mug was not rigid, if instead it was flexible like a slinky or like a bendy straw. When you went to pick your mug up with your nice hot cocoa in it, you would end up squeezing it and spilling hot cocoa all over yourself. So different objects are flexible or rigid for different purposes, right? And those are, flexibility is a property that we can observe when we look at different objects. Now, shape is another shape is another property that we can observe. So there are regular shapes. Regular shapes are shapes that we're able to name. Some regular shapes are 2D, which stands for two-dimensional. Shapes like circles, ovals, triangles, rectangles, squares, and diamonds, or as you'll learn later on in math, the math name for a diamond is a rhombus. There are also three-dimensional shapes. Most times when we're looking at objects, they're not flat, right? They're three-dimensional. We can like hold them in our hands. Like this is three-dimensional. This marker is three-dimensional, where this paper is two-dimensional. It's flat, right? So I could describe this paper as a rectangle, but this marker, let's see if we could figure out what three-dimensional shape this marker would be. Well, here are three-dimensional shapes: cylinder, cube, rectangular prism, sphere, pyramid, and cone. So how could we describe the shape of this marker? Call it out in 3, 2, 1. Cylinder. That's right. This marker most closely resembles a cylinder. Okay. Now, some shapes are considered irregular. That means that there's not a specific name for that shape because it's not a regular shape. Here are some examples of irregular shapes. Let me show you an object that is another example of an irregular shape. Take a look at this shell, right? We wouldn't really say that this shell has any shape that we could name. It looks a little bit like a cone, but it's not flat on the bottom like a cone, right? It's kind of pointy here. So we would say that this shell has an irregular shape. We can also describe the shape of objects as being either straight, like this pencil is straight, or curved, like this ball is curved. This shell, we could say, is curved. Okay, now let's talk about some texture words. Can you think of some texture words? Go ahead and see how many you can name across your fingers. Let's see. All right, let's take a look at some examples of different textures that we might be able to feel. So soft, hard, smooth, rough, bumpy, fuzzy like these mittens, prickly like this cactus, or pointy like this pencil. Now, some objects have more than one texture. For example, take this pencil, for example. So the pencil, the tip of it is pointy, but if you feel along the length of the pencil, it feels smooth. So don't forget, when we're talking about properties, objects can have more than one texture, more than one color. Okay. Okay, and size. So objects could be large or small. Now it's time for us to do an activity. I want you to find 10 solids that you can observe. If you're home, you'll find 10 things around your house. If you're in school, I want you to find 10 things at your desk or your table. It could be in your bin, it could be inside your desk, any 10 items around you. But the first two are going to be the same for us all. So let's find the first two together. Number one, a pencil. I know everyone has a pencil, so take out your pencil. That will count as one of your 10 items. And number two, Post-its or stickies. Go ahead and find those, find those Post-its or stickies and take those out. That will count as our second of our 10 items. Okay, now I'm going to give you 1 minute to find 8 more solids. Now, there are some rules when you're looking for solids. One is that it has to be something that you'll be able to use again in our next science lesson, because we're going to use these same objects for our next science lesson. So because of that, it cannot be anything food related, because that could maybe go bad. Okay? So 10 objects, something that you'll be able to use again in our next science lesson, and it cannot be any type of food or anything that would go bad. Ready, set, go. Find those 8 objects, 8 solids. All right, time is up. Eyes on me. Were you able to find 8 more solids within that time? Don't worry, if you weren't, while we're doing our next activity, you can find more. Okay, so now we are going to work on describing the properties of the solids that you found. So I'm going to show you in just a moment the sheet that we'll be using to describe the properties. And we're going to, after we finish the sheet, we're going to make sure to keep the sheet in a safe place. We'll be using it in our next lesson. So let me show you what it looks like. Okay, this is what our sheet looks like. It says name, date, 2nd grade science lesson 3, describing properties of solids. And here it says object, color, flexibility, shape, texture, and size. And then on the second page, there's a question. It says, make an observation about the properties of your objects. Did any of your objects share some of the same properties? So if you're working from home, you will find this in your Google Classroom. You'll also find a printout of the properties that we'll be looking at. So if you need any help with spelling or remembering some of the different properties that we'll be naming, you can use that sheet to help you. If you're in school, your teacher will give you all of these same materials. Okay, let me show you the materials that I chose, and then we'll start going through and describing their properties. So here are the examples, here are the objects rather, the solid objects that I chose. A marker, a hair tie, a cotton ball, a paper clip, a golf ball, a pair of scissors, a pencil. We all have that pencil, right? Post-its. We all have those Post-its. A pen and a ruler. All right, 2nd graders. You know what we always say. The first thing we do is always the same. We pick up our pen or our pencil and write down our name. So make sure to do that. First things first. And then write the date. Make sure that you write your date. Today's date for me is the 21st. but you'll probably be doing this lesson a week later than me. So check to see what your date is. It's probably still September though. All right. Now, once you have your name and your date written, let's start with our first object. We all have a pencil. So we're going to start by writing the word pencil under object. So go ahead and write pencil. Okay. Now we're going to describe the color of the pencil. Our next property is color. So what color is this pencil? It's yellow. So I'm going to write yellow. Okay, now if you're not sure how to spell yellow, you can use that sheet that I told you about that your teacher will be giving to you or will be available in Google Classroom to see how to spell the word yellow. Now, flexibility. We want to know, is this item flexible or rigid? Well, let's see. Can I bend it? I can't bend it. So it would be rigid. I'm going to write rigid. And you can check the spelling in that packet. Okay, now the shape. Well, let's see. I wouldn't say that this is a two-dimensional shape, right? It's certainly not flat. It's definitely a three-dimensional shape. We could say it's like a cylinder, right? Or we could even say it's irregular because it's not like a true cylinder. It has this point on the end. Either one would probably work. I'm going to say cylinder. Okay, and then texture. We feel it, it feels smooth, but then at the end it's pointy. So I'm going to write smooth, and my pencil, maybe I'll say long actually. We could say small, large, long, or short. Okay, so I'll say long. Okay. Now let's do one more together and then you'll do the rest on your own. So we have here our sticky notes, right? Or our Post-its. So for object, I'm going to write Post-its. Post-its. And I made it a capital because Post-it is actually the name of the company. And I know that names always get capitals. For the color, oh, I'll say yellow again. It's also yellow. For flexibility, let's see. I can bend it. It's bendable. So I'm not going to say it's rigid. I'm going to say it's flexible. Now for shape, this is pretty flat actually. Guess it depends on how big your stack is, but for me, it's pretty flat. So I'm just going to say square. Sort of a 2D shape. It's a square. Now for texture, let me feel it. It's smooth. And the size is, let's see. Well, it's bigger than my cotton ball. It's smaller than my ruler, certainly. Maybe I'll say it's like medium sized. Okay. Now I'm going to go on. Thanks so much for learning with me today, second grade scientists. Now go off and name all those properties of your objects and then write about your observations. I'll see you here next time. Don't forget, keep your sheet in a safe place because we'll need it again. And you'll want to be able to find all of those same objects again next time. Bye-bye, everyone.